All right, guys, we're gonna start with our outer edge of the flower and we're gonna use our red. So I'm just gonna smash the tip of my bag and I'm gonna grab my scissors and I'm gonna cut just a small hole, okay? And I'm gonna outline this outer edge of my firepower flower. And after that, I'm going to grab my mushroom. So just tap that down. I'm gonna set this aside. I'm gonna grab my mushroom. All right. And I'm gonna outline this top part of the face and then all the way around the mushroom. And then I'm gonna go back in and outline those circles, the half circles in the circle. Okay. And if you need to, you can pause between these segments. I'm sure that I'm going to be going a lot faster than I do in class. Be careful when you're moving this guy. Next, you are going to get your flower again. Let's do this. Because we're going to be working in twos for the most of the class, pretty much the whole class. Grab your flower and your star. Okay, I'm gonna open my yellow the same way that we just did with our red. Okay, just flatten the tip out, cut just a small hole. And I'm gonna outline that next ring on the flower. And then I'm going to outline that star. Okay, so I'm just gonna do these in little sections. And I'm gonna tap down at those corners so that I get a sharp edge of the star. Okay. And then you can just use your scribe to push that out of the way, or your toothpick if you don't have a scribe. And then we are gonna grab, we're still gonna keep our flower, but we're gonna grab our warp pipe. So when we decorate this, we're gonna decorate it in 2 seconds so we get the separation that you see here. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm gonna grab my green. Same thing again, just flatten the tip of your bag out and cut a small hole. We're not gonna cut any larger holes until we get everything outlined, okay? So on your flower, there's this little piece of the stem sticking out. I want you to start at the bottom and just bring a straight line up to your flower. And touch that red very gently. Bring the other side up. And then you're just gonna connect your lines at the bottom. Then we're gonna outline the leaves. So I'm gonna start right here and come around and tap down. And then I'm just gonna follow along the natural curve of this leaf. Down, and then I'll do the other side. Tap down, bring that around, okay? And then I'm gonna just cover those lines that are on the cookies. These are made with an edible ink printer, so they're completely safe for you guys to eat. All right, and then I'm gonna go over to this one. So you can do one of two things. In class, some of the kids found it easier to outline the whole warp pipe first and then make that second line across for the separation. So you can do that. We'll do this top part. And if your line breaks like mine, that's not a big deal. I'm just gonna connect it back in. And then I'm gonna bring my line straight across, just like that. All right. This is where you might need to pause it a little bit, but I'm going to push my green cookie out of the way and bring, let's see, the mushroom back. And we are gonna do the ivory outline right here and the ivory outline inside of our firepower, the last ring on this one. So grab your ivory. Looks really close to white. Just smash the tip of that icing bag and cut a small hole again. Oops. My hands are shaky today. All right. And we are just going to make that inner little circle. And then right here on this guy, I'm just going to tap the edge of that red line and go all the way around and tap up. Okay. So after this, you want to give your outline a little bit of time to crust over, but I'm going to go into this one right now. And I'm still not going to cut my bag any larger just because we are flooding a relatively small area. But if you feel like you're really struggling and you are squeezing that bag really hard, go ahead and cut it just a little bit bigger. All right. So I'm just using my icing bag and I'm wiggling and jiggling that icing along those outlines. We are not going to fill these in with red. We are going to fill those circles in with our ivory. So you want to just go around those outlines, okay, and just wiggle and jiggle to help your icing settle a little bit. Just keep going around. And you guys know, because you've been in class before, you want to make sure that you're trying to work a little bit more quickly, because your icing will crust up on you if you take a little bit too long, so we don't want it to crust up on you. And remember that when you are filling in your cookies with your flood, you want your piping bag to almost be touching your cookie. You don't want it far away the same way it is when we're outlining, okay? So you can use a toothpick or a scribe and just gently give your cookie a little shake. All right. And if you have any air bubbles, you can use your toothpick to pop those and just very gently jiggle the surface of your icing. All right. And then I'm going to go back to my flower and I'm going to do this red section right here. So the same thing, I'm not cutting any larger. I'm just using my icing bag to push this icing around. And remember, you don't want to be able to see your cookie through your icing. So if you can see your cookie through your icing, you need to give it a little bit more icing. And also, if it's really hard for you to jiggle your icing, if it doesn't seem like it's jiggling out for you, you probably need to add more icing. Probably just don't have enough. Okay. Just jiggle that around a little bit. And I have a little air bubble, so I'm going to pop that. All right, good jiggle. Okay, so now I'm gonna go back to, we're gonna keep our flower and we are gonna go to the star. Okay, so I'm just gonna gently push that out of the way, bring my star over for you. So this guy's a little bit, he's easier just because he's one piece. So I'm gonna show you the way I want you to try and flood your cookie this time, because it makes it a little bit easier when you're working with a big surface. Sometimes your icing will crust up on you when you're working in a large area. If you go in circular motions, kind of like this around the cookie to the inside, which I'll show you how to do on the warp pipe, but I want you guys to try it like this first. A lot of the kids that tried this yesterday thought that it was a lot easier to get their whole cookie flooded. All right, so before I go to my star, I am gonna go back to this one, but if your outline has not crusted up yet and your red probably hasn't crusted up enough yet, just hold off a couple of minutes, just pause the video and then come back. Okay, so I'm gonna fill this in. We're gonna pretend that my cookie is crusted over a little bit, and I'm just gonna fill it in the same way that we did with the red. You just want to be really gentle when you are pushing that icing in here, that you don't bump into your red, because your red, even once it starts to crust over a little bit, it's still really wet underneath. Okay, so just be careful with that. Okay, and then I'll give it a little jiggle. And then I'm gonna go back to my bag. I'm gonna squeeze the tip of my bag flat again, and I'm gonna cut my hole just a little bit bigger. It doesn't have to be a lot, because when you cut these, just a little bit actually makes a lot, or a much larger hole. Okay, So when I flood this, I'm gonna flood kind of like top to bottom. I'm gonna go kind of side to side all the way down so that I never have a free edge of icing for a long period of time. And that helps because you're always working with a fresh edge of icing. It helps keep it from crusting up on you when you are working on a larger cookie. So just kind of push that icing over to the edge while you're doing it and shake your bag and jiggle that icing. And again, you don't want to see any of your cookie through the icing. Okay, so just jiggle it while you're moving along. And this also allows me to move a little bit more quickly. Other than like when I get to the edges, I tend to slow down when I get to the edges so I don't go over the edge. But you can just squeeze this icing on, pushing it over to the outline. And then as soon as I finish, I'm just gonna give it a little jiggle. Okay, and that will help all of that icing just settle down and lie flat for me, and it smooths out. Okay, remember if you have any little air bubbles, just gently touch the surface just like this and it will melt back into itself. Okay, and if you have any lines where you want to kind of pull it out, you can use your toothpick or your scribe to pull it out to the edge a little bit more, just like that. And if you happen to have icing going over the edge of your cookie, it's not a big deal. Just use your scribe and scrape it off like this. And make sure that you're using a clean paper towel and a clean toothpick when you do this, because the royal icing likes to stick to itself and we don't want that. Okay, so now I'm gonna go back to the pipe. So I'm gonna push my star out of the way very gently. We're gonna do the pipe and the flower. So the first thing I'm gonna do before I cut my hole any larger, I'm gonna do this stem and the top parts of the leaves. Okay, so I'm just gonna start here and I'm just gently pushing that icing in and being very gentle when I get to the top by the red because it's still really wet. And then I'm gonna use my scribe or my toothpick to just gently jiggle that icing out onto my outline. Okay. So remember, when you're doing your outlines also, your outlines don't have to be perfect because we're covering them up with our icing. So I'm gonna do this top part. Just gonna squeeze that in. And then I'll use my scribe to bring it a little bit closer just because our stem is still wet. And I don't want it to bleed into it. I want it to stay separated. And then I'll do the other side. And the same thing. Just use my toothpick or my scribe to pull that icing where I want it. Give it a little jiggle. The only place I don't want to poke this cookie is right here because we are not filling that in with anything, so I don't want any holes right there. Okay, so just like on the pipe, we have that separation. That's what you're going to get by doing these leaves separately. But if you would rather have your leaves be all one piece, you can definitely flood them all together, and you don't even need to worry about that center line when you're outlining. You could just pipe right over it. Okay, so for my green now, I'm going to cut my hole just a slight bit bigger. I don't want to go too big because I still have to flood these smaller spaces, but I want to show you how to flood a larger area just in a circular motion. So sometimes when you do it like this, I'm going to start at the corner and just gently push my icing up against my outline. But sometimes when you're working with a larger surface area and you go around kind of in circles, like from the outer edges to the center, your icing can dry out on some of those edges. And then when you are trying to come back around and kind of get them to go into each other, like up here, sometimes these edges will dry out by the time you get back to them. But this is a smaller section cookie that we're doing, so we shouldn't have that issue. But let me know. I would love to know when you guys do this, if you liked flooding it the way that I showed you with the star, or if you prefer going in circles like we did with the pipe. All right, so just gently pop any bubbles and then the little hole from where my scribe was. Okay. All right, and now I'm going to keep my my flower, and I'm gonna push my warp pipe gently out of the way, and I'm gonna bring my mushroom back. All right, so for my mushroom and my flower, I'm gonna do the ivory parts. So this one, because we're working with small areas, again, I'm not gonna make my hole any bigger. I'm just gonna fill this up against that yellow, and I'm also going to give it a little bit more icing in here because we don't have to worry about it overflowing because it's up against the yellow. So I just wanna make this area a little bit more puffy. So I'm gonna give it a little more of that icing. Okay, just jiggle that out. And if you need to shake it, just poke your cookie gently down here. All right, and then I'm gonna do the face of the mushroom, and I'm just gonna gently push this up against the red. Remember, it's still really wet, so I wanna be careful. And just jiggle your bag into your icing to help it smooth out a little bit faster. And just give your cookie a little jiggle. Wiggle and jiggle. Okay. Got a couple of air bubbles. Okay, and then I'm gonna do this center one, and I'm gonna do the same thing like I did on the center of the flower. I'm gonna fill this in, and then I'm gonna give this one a little bit of extra icing so it's nice and puffy, since this doesn't have anywhere to go either. Okay, and then I'll do those little side ones. And the side half circles, I just wanna be kind of careful that they don't go off the edge. So sometimes it's helpful if you flood kind of up against the inner part right here. And then I'll just put a little more icing right there. And then I'll use my scribe or my toothpick to kind of pull that icing out to the side so that I can make sure that it doesn't go over the edge. Just like that, okay? And then I'll do the other side. Just being careful, and jiggle your bag. And then pull that icing over there to the edge. Okay. And you can still give it a little jiggle, just very gently poke it in there in the section that you just did, and then use your scribe to just jiggle the very surface of that icing. Okay. All right, so now I'm gonna keep my flower. I'm just gonna bump my mushroom out of the way for a moment, and I'm gonna bring back my warp pipe, okay? So the first thing I'm gonna do, since I just flooded this and I'm not letting my stuff crust over like you are, I'm gonna go back to my leaves, and I'm just gonna gently pipe the icing in here and flood it. Again, I'm gonna use my scribe to kind of pull that icing out to the edges. Just like that. And then I'll do the other side. Pull that in. And you can see how, even though my leaves aren't crusted up all the way, you can already see that we have that definition just like we did in our finished cookie. All right, so we're gonna set this one aside for the moment because we are almost done with this one. We just have to put the eyes on. Now I'm gonna flood the top part of the pipe, and I'm going to just start at the top up here, up against the outline, wiggle and jiggle. And if it makes it easier for you, you can always turn your cookie around so that you're working up against that edge and you can kind of see the wet edge of your cookie. So I'm just gonna gently push it up against it. I don't want to crack the surface of that icing. Okay. And give it a little jiggle. Making sure there's no holes in my icing where I can see my cookie. Okay, give it a little jiggle. Remember to keep your scribe clean, or your toothpick, whatever you're using. Okay, I'm just going to turn this around. All right, and when you finish this one, you have officially completed your first cookie in our Power Up set. But I am going to give you an option of something else to do with it. So don't push it out of the way yet. Okay, so I'm just going to bump this one over here, and I'm going to bring, excuse me, these three over, because I'm going to add the eyes. So in some of our other classes, we've added transfers to our cookies. These are our little black icing, royal icing transfers. So this is the same icing that you guys are using for your cookies. It's just made with a little template, and then they dry overnight, so they become hard, and then you can use them to put on your cookies. So you have 4 sets of eyes. One set is actually an extra one, but I learned in class that there is a pipe in one of the Super Mario worlds that has eyes on it. So you can definitely put your eyes on the pipe if you want to. And you can also reference your little picture that was in your kit to see the placement of the eyes. But the easiest way to do this, since they are so small, you can wait until your cookies are crusted over or dry if you're scared of bumping your cookie. But when you do go to do it, whether you do it now or later, you're just gonna gently place a dot of icing on top of your cookie. I'm not pressing into my cookie at all, okay? And then I'm gonna grab my little eye, and I'm just gonna hover over my cookie and just let that fall. So it looks crooked, right? But you're just gonna use your scribe or your toothpick, and you're just gently gonna move it. I'm not pressing into my cookie again, and then just gently tap down. Okay, and then I'll do the same thing with this guy. Okay, and then you can move him out of the way so you don't accidentally bump him. I'm gonna bring these guys in, and I'm gonna do the same thing, just a very small dot of icing. All right, and I'll just hover over it, let it fall. There we go. One more. Oh, I just accidentally crushed my cookie a little bit, but that's okay. They're still gonna taste good. All right, and then we have our flour. So just a little drop, little drop. You don't wanna put too much icing that when you push your eye on, it squeezes out the back. We don't wanna see it. We want it to look like it's actually part of the cookie. So that one went a little far down. So I'm gonna just scooch it with my scribe. And then our last one. Oh, and it went upside down. That's probably why it's a good idea to wait till these are dry. And you guys have that option since you're not doing it in class. If that does happen though, I can't get it off. Okay, if that does happen, my icing is still kind of wet. Your guys's probably won't be, because you're probably not working as fast as I am. So I can kind of jiggle that out, but I'm just gonna put my dot of icing back on here, and I'm gonna try to cover that up as much as I can with that royal icing eyeball. There. So it's a little bit closer than it's supposed to be, but that's okay. They still look really good, and they're gonna taste good. So if you want to, you could put your other eyes on here as well. But I hope you guys have so much fun decorating your cookies, and I hope to see you all soon.